All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Today we have a guest that we didn't know was gonna come on. It was actually a referral. I knew I would eventually get to these guys, but it was a referral from Germ from Freedom Malts, and he told me about this distillery and said they're doing some cool stuff up around him. And I said, hey, I'm all about craft guys doing cool stuff. So let's go. So without further ado, it's Paul and Bob with 45th Parallel Spirits. How's it going, guys? Did I get it?
Doing good. We're doing good. Today is kind of a big day for us this afternoon.
Uh-huh.
We are releasing a 10-year bourbon,
Oh, wow.
and it's just to our whiskey club. We have our first ever whiskey club, and this is
Okay.
our first ever meeting. So we have, like 50 members
Mhm.
that are coming into the old distillery part, and we're going to have a little party tonight and release the 10-year bourbon.
That's
it's rare that you know beforehand that they're going to like it, but they're going to like this whiskey.
that's good. That's good. Yeah, 10 years for a bourbon from a you guys can tell me when y'all got started and stuff, but 10 years for a craft distillery is a long time to be to be letting it sit in a barrel, because you ain't making no money on it, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, we've been around a while. Tomorrow, the reason why we're releasing it today is it's the day before our 17th anniversary.
Oh, wow. Okay. Y'all been around for a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. Okay, so tell me, whoever, whoever's listening, about a little bit about what got y'all into the distilling, and you can do it separately or together, however you want to do it. I know you guys are on a time constraint, so I don't want to keep you all night. But kind of tell us what got y'all into the spirits making process, and we can go from there.
Well, I'll start first because mine was a little bit non-traditional. Actually, Bob's is fairly traditional. I had no background in it. I had a degree in history, and but I did have an interest in it, and so I did start researching on it in around 2004, and then by 2005 we formed our LLC, and mainly because my wife agreed to it. It was the first thing that I kind of came up with that she said, okay. And so then I started the distillery, and then Bob came in later. But Bob he does have a background in
Okay.
this. He can explain it.
Yeah, I actually studied brewing and distilling back in Scotland about 30 years ago.
Okay.
And obviously the original plan was to get himself a nice job in the Highlands and work middle of nowhere, not have to speak to everyone but sheep every morning. And instead I ended up in the Midwest making beer.
Mm-hmm.
So I made beer for about 25 years, and eventually ended up in a brewery kind of across the soybean field from the distillery here, and stopped in, and they gave me a taste of the rye whiskey, and it was like, this is the best American whiskey I think I've ever had. This is like actually almost as good as Scotch.
Yeah.
So one thing led to another, and I ended up working here, and I'm extremely happy I have.
That's good. That's good. That's awesome. So you came from a non-traditional background, and he came from a traditional background. How is and I don't mean to throw you under the bus on this one, but how's the working environment over there? Is it
It's pretty good. I used to be the main distiller here, and for a long time I would hire people to come in and help me distill, and a lot of them, they did a good job, but they really did what you told them to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't really understand why they were doing it.
Right.
So Bob is the first one that I've had here that actually understands why we're doing things, and he understands the chemistry better than I do. So, and unfortunately, I really don't distill anymore. It's Bob's show down there.
Right.
I'm pretty much up in the office answering emails all day.
Right.
Going over numbers too. So
I don't do numbers, so that's good. But I know I'd say during the 12 years before I got here, Paul had a lot of things figured out, and seems to have been natural for someone that never had a background. He picked it up really well. So there's not an awful lot of stuff that I've had to do differently from what he was doing. It's basically the fundamentals. You keep things clean. You give the yeast a good environment to grow in, and then you make a good whiskey. Mm-hmm. So if you get those things right, you're 90% of the way.
Yeah, for me, it's really not that complicated. I mean, like you said, we don't have to talk about trade secrets. I just think distilling's not complicated. It's if you pay attention to details and you're patient, you're going to do a good job.
Right.
Yeah, I was just talking to someone else, and we were laughing about the trade secrets of mash bills, and it's like, well, in Scotland, there's one mash bill. It's like 100% malt, and yes. They come out with all these different flavors. So, I mean, don't worry about the mash bill. That's the least of your issues.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy. So let's talk a little bit about the process, because I was thumbing through y'all's website, and it said that y'all had a whiskey that you use a different type of yeast on, and that's something that on this channel we get really geeky with. We like to learn about the different types of yeast, the lactobacillus or whatever you're throwing in there to give it a funkiness. Tell us a little bit about that.
I'm trying to figure out what that is about. I mean, we're actually redoing our website right now. It should be launched any day. That may be something that's old. I think back
did I do the wrong thing?
No. When we first started up, that was back in distilling in 2007. There really weren't that many distilleries, and there was a German company that asked me to try a yeast. And when I went to try and order it, they told me that they didn't want me to try it because they said nobody in the U.S. is using that. And wow. But they let us use it, and now 17 years later, it's pretty common. I mean, there are other distillers using it. So
right. And of course now I can't find it. It's the story of my life. But anyway, so let's talk about this 10-year-old bourbon since y'all are releasing it tonight. What's the mash bill on that, and give us kind of some specs on that.
It's a 4-grain. It's about 62% corn, okay. Around 13%. Yeah, 13% wheat and rye, and then about 12% malt.
Okay.
So, I think we our barrels have traditionally come from McGinnis out of Missouri. Okay. So they're all 3-year air dried staves, and they're all 53s. We never use small barrels. And this one, I just remember putting it up in the rack, and it had a nice spot, not too far from a window, and that's and unfortunately for me, whoever was in charge of our brick house, they kind of held it aside. They didn't release it, and right. Then they told me about it. So it's coming up to 10 years, and so we thought, well, let's release that on our anniversary.
Right. I mean that's pretty awesome. Yeah, because rickhouse placement, we've talked about this multiple times. Rickhouse placement is a big thing. Top of the rickhouse, medium, in the middle, by a window, on the floor. It makes a big difference. And I don't know the weather fluctuations y'all have up there, but I'm sure it gets fairly cold. What about your heat cycles? How are they?
I don't think it fluctuates any more anywhere else than it does here.
Okay. Explain that a little bit for me.
Oh, it's the upper Midwest. Right. It's we're close to the Great Lakes. We're close to Canada. We have the Dakotas on one side of us, so we get extreme cold here, okay. But then we get hot too. So we get heat in summer and cold in winter.
Yeah, we pretty much right about late November it gets down below 40 degrees in the rickhouse, and then it's probably late April before it heats back up.
Okay.
And 40 degrees is kind of that magic number of which we think maturation ends.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, for 3 months of the year, the whiskey's just sitting there.
Right.
So,
It never really gets below 30 in there. I mean, it could be 20 below outside, and it'll be 30 degrees inside the rick house.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. So, I mean, it's not, so are you having, an issue with, angel share? Like what's your angel share percent? I don't know if you know the percentage, but, that might be a thing that you have to know. I don't know, but what is, are you?
I call it revenue loss, and that's probably at around what 15% or more. It really depends, it depends on, it depends on where, and it probably just depends on that, that batch of barrels too.
Yeah.
Because we've had some rye that we've had like 20% loss, 21% loss.
Oh, okay.
Then we have some loss, probably 14, 15%. I really don't dump barrels anymore. I used to track that pretty closely.
Right.
But I should probably pay attention to that because our whiskeys we really don't release anything too young anymore. Probably when I was down there doing it, we were releasing stuff at around 4 years old. But now everything's pretty much, between 5 and 7 years.
Wow. Okay. Awesome.
there's usually quite a bit more loss on a single malt for some reason. It's totally unrelated to having a Scotch distiller.
Right.
It might sound a little bit more often than it should. But yeah.
I used to think that about the ryes, but I'm not sure anymore. But
Yeah, that's crazy that certain distillates will evaporate at different rates. All right, so talk to us a little bit about the rye. And also another thing I wanted to kind of go over was the restaurant, and then you have like a farm that's really close by. Is that correct? That you get some of your grain from?
Well, actually, we get it from one farm. Actually, really two now. I mean, there's one farm that's nearby that does some heritage grain for us.
Okay.
And so we'll buy their crops. But our main farm they're actually not super close. I mean, they're in the same neighborhood. They're about 8 miles away.
Yeah.
And but by us, there's farms all around us. So,
right.
But the mills recommended this farm, and they just said they had the most consistent crops. So that's why we go to them.
Awesome. And y'all are
one of the nice things about distilling is that you can be local versus like working breweries for 25 years, and we're using grain from Germany and England and wherever. With this keeping it local, it's much more. It kind of gives you an identity that you don't get otherwise.
Right.
Well, we can get grain within 24 hours. Hey, call up the farm. We need grain tomorrow. And they'll get it to us.
Right.
And we don't have to go pick it up. They bring it to us, and it works out really well. They're a 7th-generation, no nonsense dairy farm.
Right. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about the heirloom. Is it a wheat, correct?
It is a wheat. It's called Red Fife.
Okay, I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's out of Canada. Basically its origins are out of Canada. It's heritage grain that was probably pretty prevalent about 100 years ago.
Okay, that's cool. And what is the what? This might be kind of hard to say. What is the flavor profile of that compared? Because you have a regular wheat whiskey as well, right? What is the flavor difference, I guess, between the Red Fife and your regular wheated whiskey?
I think it's just much richer with the regular wheat, because it's a much more real wheat flavor. You get a lot more of the spiciness from the barrel almost, versus with the Red Fife, the wheat is kind of a bit more prevalent. I think there might be a little bit more fruitiness from like esters and stuff from the fermentation or from the grain. It's just a much stronger flavor. It's kind of like the way I always look at it, like we said back in brewing it with heirloom grains, is kind of in the 60s. So it's the goal was always to develop grain that would give the farmer a really good yield in the field. And secondary was whether it would actually taste good. And that's kind of how we ended up with Wonder Bread and all the kind of bland beer and stuff that we started getting in the 60s. Going back to heirloom varieties, those are ones that were farmers plant them because they made good bread.
Right.
So it's kind of going back to that kind of idea that, the grain can affect the flavor. I mean, I studied brewing in the 90s and they were pretty much, well, the barley variety doesn't affect the malt at all.
Yeah.
But then the next sentence they tell you about Minnesota were all these great grain varieties that make great beer. So
Right. Yeah.
I thought the regular wheat was just kind of it's soft, it's pleasant, but the Red 5 has a lot more depth to it and character.
and they're both great whiskeys. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't go wrong with either one.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, you have a wheat whiskey, you're getting something good because all the wheat whiskeys that I've had. Now I had one that was 100% wheat whiskey. It was a little bit, it got a little weird on me. And of course that was out of Texas. So it was, some of the fermentations got a little hot or something like that. But anyway, but it was good. But then you get like a good mixture of like a 65 or 70% wheat, then I think you're doing pretty good. Okay, so y'all also create other spirits too. Do you have a separate still set up for those other creations, or is it all ran through the same setup?
All our stills are different.
Okay.
I mean, they're all not one of them is exactly the same. So they all have different kind of helmets on them. They all have a different reflux pattern to them. So,
Okay.
but Bob can tell you. I mean, he uses two mainly for stripping and two mainly for finishing.
Yeah, we got kind of. I mean, essentially, I don't know how to describe it. It's basically just a regular, almost American style stripping still.
Okay.
We also have a 4,000 liter pot still that we do our stripping in.
Okay.
In general, I'd say we have two pot stills that we use for whiskey, and then we've got the hybrid American stripping still, and then a hybrid finishing still that's a little bit shorter. And that one's also attached to a vodka column, so we can run vodka through that one.
Okay.
We've got like a 24 plate vodka column that we can get up to 190 proof on. But even most of our whiskey also goes through those two hybrid stills. So we kind of do a blend of the two.
Right.
We have kept doing just pot stills, so we're solely batch distillation. We don't have a column, and it definitely, I mean, it gives us a much richer flavor.
Yeah.
Whiskey, obviously, but yeah, I mean that's kind of one of the things that Paul's been big on is staying on pot stills, even though we could probably make our whiskey much cheaper on a column.
Well, we got to the point where our capacity was getting up there, and we had to make a decision. Do you want to go with the stripping column and then like pretty much everybody else that has our capacity, right, or do you want to stay doing something different? And so I did that. The stripping columns cost more to set up, but our way of producing is probably more expensive in the long run because it just takes a lot more manpower,
right,
and a lot more time.
Right. Yeah, but if you can produce a I won't say better product, but if you can produce a better product, then why not? Yeah, I understand bottom line is a thing, but if you're I wouldn't say not cutting corners, but if you're changing something in the process to make more whiskey, that doesn't mean it's actually better whiskey, if that makes sense. I don't know, but yeah, that's so you guys also make some gin and aquavit, is that correct?
Yeah, that started out as a contract. I mean, gentleman came through the door and he spent some time overseas, and he developed a fondness for dill aquavit and asked us to develop it in the United States because nobody had it.
Right.
And that was back in around 2009, and we started doing it then, and it actually sells pretty good.
Really?
I mean, so we we started, he asked us to do a couple other varieties, different, infusions and some barrel aging and different types of barrels. So yeah, that's how we got into the aquavit line. I mean, they're not our bread and butter.
Right.
I mean, I told him, Bob, many times that we're meat and potatoes. We do whiskey, we do vodka, we do gin.
Right.
We don't get into a lot of the other real strange stuff. We do that. We produce a fair amount, but it's mostly grain spirits.
Right. Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, yeah, because I mean, you can go as crazy as you want, but if you're making just a small batch, you only have so many bottles, and you went through all that time and energy. And I know getting extra, like I saw a limoncello on your website, like getting all the ingredients to make that is a lot more expensive than just going and get some grain and making some whiskey. So, yeah, you got to sit on the whiskey for a while, but yeah, and it will probably sell a whole lot easier than some of the other things as well. So yeah, that's
We have the cellos mainly because there's a lot of people that come into the distillery, and not everybody wants a straight up a shot of whiskey or vodka. They want something a little sweeter. So it's nice. And then one of our first distillers, I've known him for a long time. He's got kind of an Italian wine background.
Okay.
And so that's why we started doing the cellos, just because of his Italian background.
Right. Have you thought about going into brandy, or is that just a whole nother concept?
Well, we do make brandy.
Okay.
We've never released it.
Okay.
And we've been doing it for about 5-6 years. Yeah. So we do have a connection, a supplier that likes to, it's almost like a French style. We crush the apples here, juice them here. We do our fermentations, basically ambient style, how would you just?
It's essentially a wild fermentation.
Wild ferment. Okay.
Yeah.
It's long. And so it's not like the kind of brandy that people are used to here. It's going to be more like an Eau de Bay in Europe. So we just haven't released it yet. We do enough of it to where I don't want to do it because it's really expensive. Fruit is expensive. It takes a lot of apples to make just a little bit of brandy.
Yes.
I mean, we're in the corn region up here. I mean, we could make a lot of bourbon without a lot of effort, without a lot of expense.
Right. No, I don't blame you. It's kind of like you were saying earlier, meat and potatoes. But I always ask because there's always seems to be in the distillery sometimes, like a lot of the distilleries that I've talked to, they're connected to a winery or something like that. And so like it's kind of one of those things. Tell us, you had mentioned something earlier about a restaurant. So tell us a little bit about that. And does that help bring people into the distillery as well?
Yeah, it does. I mean, when we built this distillery, this town is a relatively small town, and it really isn't a tourist town, but it's close to a metropolitan area.
Right.
So the town is growing, and now the town is growing to the point where we felt like it could support something. And plus, the industry is changing. When we started up, there were maybe 50 distilleries in the country. Now there's several thousand.
Yeah.
So you really have to kind of be able to protect yourself and have a different revenue stream. And so we built an event center, restaurant, bar.
Okay. And are the laws in your state to where anything that's on the premises of the distillery has to be made by y'all? Because here in Texas, like if you're going to serve even some what you have most of those things, but like if you want to serve like a rum cocktail, you have to have made the rum in-house. Is that up there with y'all or no?
As of now, yes.
Okay.
And we do make rum. We have a small distillery across the river in Minnesota that we do make rum there, but that's relatively new. But Wisconsin just had a major overhaul of their liquor laws,
Okay.
and that's going to go into effect in April.
Okay.
And so we can serve beer, wine. We can serve spirits from other distilleries.
Okay.
We can serve pretty much whatever we want starting this spring.
That's that. I bet that's going to open it up a lot, though.
Yeah, they liberalized the laws quite a bit in the state. It's been a long time coming. It was really driven by all the industries. I mean, brewing, distilling, winemaking.
Right.
They all kind of got together with the distributors too. Actually, we did have a partnership with the distributors on this one, so that I think they see it as, hey, if you got a successful place here, we can sell you wine, we can sell you beer to this distillery now.
Right. Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
But
Go ahead.
the origin of the place was, I think you were originally going to open in Minnesota, and ended up here because Minnesota's laws were not designed for small distilleries.
No, Minnesota, their laws are geared more towards the interest of other parts of the industry. So I'm just gonna leave it at that.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, they're not very friendly towards this. They're trying to be. They're trying to change their laws, but when we started up, you really couldn't produce in Minnesota. They had a $30,000 annual permit fee, and it was specifically designed to keep small producers out of the state, and that nobody knew about it.
Right.
Minnesota was the last state to get a small distillery because once people realized what this law was, and then they had it changed.
Right.
Now there's probably around 30 distilleries.
Right. Right. That's awesome. That is awesome that people finally listened, which that doesn't normally happen. And you're able to produce. Okay, so tell us, where was I going? See, that's the thing. If I don't write it down, I lose it and then it's gone. So, okay. Oh, yes. I wanted to ask a technical question. Barrel entry proof, and you said you're using Missouri oak aged 3 years, which is really right now is really difficult to get, which I'm sure if you guys have contract, that's great. But I know of some other people in distilleries and they're like, man, we're lucky to get 18-month-old, wood. So tell us a little bit about barrel entry proof and what you're pulling it out of the barrel at. So that kind of gives me your, if it goes in at 115, it comes out at 130, something like that. Let's talk about that.
We go in on our stuff. We go in at 117, and I think we come out just a little over 121.
We're between 121 and probably 123, depending on the age.
Okay.
And then as far as the wood, yeah, definitely getting a hold of Missouri 3 years is very challenging at the moment. We've had to try some different barrels over the last year or so.
Well, it's like we get a blip, they get 6 months where they can't, we've been since we started barreling whiskey, we were getting it from the same place.
Right.
But the last couple of years, it's been kind of like they're running out of wood. We have to go somewhere else.
Right.
But if you go to ISC, you're getting wood pretty much from the same area.
Right.
Whether or not it's going to be 3-year air dried staves, that's another thing. It's probably going to, like you said, it's probably going to be like 18 months and finished up in a kiln.
Right.
But pretty much 90% of our barrels in that rick house are 3-year air dried staves.
Certainly, and we're releasing at the moment is
right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we got lucky with our supplier, McGinnis. They're not always better. I mean, they don't have very many customers. They only had a couple big customers, and somehow, I don't know, we got lucky and they started supplying us with barrels.
So you got to treat them good, right? You got to treat them good.
They're great barrels, but when you're working with them, you always end up with splinters and metal split things in your hands.
Yeah.
So that's like,
So have y'all thought about doing a single malt, or have you done a single malt?
we just released a single malt kind of January or February.
Okay.
We did a first one, and it's kind of it's a journey. So we will end up with a regular single malt. This was the first kind of step on the journey where we were taking Scottish malted barley, and then we distilled it at a brewery kind of just down the road from us. We mashed it at a brewery, and then drove it back in a truck, fermented it in the distillery, and distilled it. And it made great whiskey, and it was a great lesson. But ultimately, we want to make American single malt. We don't really. I mean, the Scottish are pretty good at making malt whiskey, so it's no reason for using Scottish malt, apart from the cost. So we're now working on doing it with American malted barley. Because we're in Wisconsin, we have to use Breeze because they're a local malt source.
Right.
So we're working with some of their malt, and kind of we'll see where we go with it. There's been a few kind of variations. We've tried mashing it ourselves. We've tried making the whiskey with the grain in the still, or grain in the fermentation and the grain out. We definitely have a preference for grain out.
Yeah, we do like grain out better. And so we tried it both ways.
Right.
But this actually the first run was grain out completely, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah, really. I mean, it's great whiskey. One thing we definitely learned is the age is so much faster in America. I mean, we're using first refill, so we're not. I mean, it's not a new barrel, but it's the first refill of the barrel, and that will certainly help the age a little bit quicker. But yeah, we got in 5 years we got a whiskey that would probably be a 10, 12-year-old whiskey in Scotland. So
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, we did not expect it to be. I did not expect it to be ready at 5 years, but quite frankly, I thought it was ready at 4.
Right.
But you're like, ship it out. Let's go. We gotta go.
We kept it. We waited. And then this year it was 5, and we said, "Oh, let's put it out there."
Yeah. And one of the other things that I've noticed with you guys is, and of course this is going off of what Germ has told me, but he's like, you guys don't really, like you said earlier, you don't want to rush anything. You want the whiskey to speak for itself, and if it needs to stay in there 6, 7, 10 years, then so be it. You know what I mean? And that says a lot, because a lot of, and coming from Texas, a lot of these Texas distilleries can't get the whiskey out fast enough. You know, they're sending out 1-year-old whiskey. Just because it has some color on it, that doesn't mean it's good whiskey, you know. And so it's a testament to your guys's fortitude, I guess, of not just like shipping the barrel out at 2 years and being like, oh, it's good enough. You know, you're actually waiting for it to develop into an excellent product, which I commend you for that, for doing that.
Well, I think the market is shifting. Like, quite frankly, up here, I don't think you can get away with young whiskey anymore. You can. I think you're going to have a hard time getting away with like 4-year whiskey.
Wow. Okay.
Up here, I think there's enough, you know, people out there putting out some pretty good stuff. So. Right.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's just strange how the different regions of the U.S. have, you know, like. I think that Texas is turning into that. Like, it's turning into like, we don't want this. Yeah, I don't want the over oaked, like, you know, like you're eating the barrel. I don't want that, but at the same time, I want it to have developed some flavor and not just be like, oh, this tastes like a barnyard with a bunch of tannins on top of it. You know, like where the palates of us are fine. Mine has always been like that, but the palates of Texas people now are turning a little bit, and we're getting some good age statements out, which is awesome. But at the same time, it's been a little bit of a struggle because you have all these underlying people coming in and they're, saying, this 1-year-old bourbon or 2-year-old bourbon is great or whatever. So it's pretty crazy. But at the same time, it's one of those things where, waiting on it can be a financial strain as well, which I know if you're doing the books, you can understand. Do you all have to pay for the barrel every tax on the barrel every year that you hold it, or is it just at the end? Because it might be different
Well,
here.
you got you basically you can't expense inventory until it's depleted.
Right.
So if you're building aging inventory, you're going to get taxed. That's revenue.
Right.
And so that, eventually you're going to get a credit on it someday. But I mean, if you're really working on building your inventory, my inventory is never less than it was the year before.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So there was one other question I had for you, and I forgot what it was, of course. Where was it? So, okay. Since you said you're in the corn area, have you done or thought of the straight corn whiskey? Just nothing else other than corn?
So I guess early in the days, Paul did one, and he wasn't that impressed. So just this summer, we had someone else come up to us. So we do a lot of contract work.
Right.
And we had someone come up to us and ask us if we do it's not straight. What's the
A light corn whiskey.
yeah
Light whiskey. Okay.
So we did it, and it was interesting enough that we made a little bit extra for ourselves.
Okay.
We'll see. I mean, it's definitely. I'd never had a light corn whiskey, and it's definitely an interesting idea to reuse a barrel and age it for 15, 16 years.
Right.
Based on the single malt, hopefully we won't have to wait that long for it. But yeah, we'll see. It's definitely a sweet vanilla-y flavor, and we'll see how it is in a few years' time.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, before we wrap this up, why don't you guys tell us your social media, your website? I know it's getting revamped. Where they can find you personally, if anybody's up around there. Give us all that information, and I'll make sure and link it in the description below so everybody has it. But just go ahead and give us that.
Well, we're 45th parallelspirits.com. I don't handle social media, so I don't know a lot about it. I don't even go on it. So
I get a few TikTok videos every so often, so that's all I know.
Yeah, people tell me, what did you think about this? And I don't know. I didn't even know we posted it. But
that's funny. I will contact the person who contacted me, and I will get it all from her and put it in the description below. How about that?
That sounds good.
Yeah, totally.
All right. So okay, one more thing. What do you see for the future of 45th? Like 10 years out? Are you still rocking and rolling, having a 20-year-old bourbon come out? What do you see? I know that's kind of a loaded question, but where do you see it?
I see it. I see that. I see us refining things, finding things that there's a tendency to want to try a whole bunch of different things. And especially when you're a small distillery and you want to see what, hey, we can get more revenue if we have another brand or if we do this and stuff like that. But I'm almost looking at what are we refining it and going to work. What are we good at? And just really focusing on those things.
Yeah. Awesome.
Based on that, I would say we're going to be 15-year-old 100% rye whiskey.
Yeah, we did. We were making 100% rye whiskey for a while. We kept on trying it, and for a while, I didn't know if it was going to turn out, but this year it's reaching 6-7 years,
Mhm.
and it's turning into something special.
Awesome. Awesome. That's exciting. And I will have to tell Germ to send me some samples. But okay, so congratulations again on your 10-year-old bourbon. That's amazing. Congratulations. And thank you guys. Stick on real fast. I want to talk to you just for a second. But guys, make sure that you are follow, like, subscribe, everything that I'm doing. If you want to support, please go to Patreon and support. I will try and link that as well. And until next time, keep your spirits up.